Okay. Greetings again, my small viewers. Okay, today I'm doing a second raw video where I reflect on the rainbow nation that South Africa is supposed to be, or maybe which was intended to be. South Africa, compared to countries of Africa, is not a homogeneous country, I'll say. Yes, because it's still an African country. It is dominated by indigenous people, which are black people, and they make up the most of the community of South Africa, of course. But it's diverse because the races of South Africa, you have Indians in large population, like millions, and areas where you know that this is the area of the Indians, communities, township, middle class, upper class, or you find them, in high end suburbs where mostly the races are mixed. You have a large community of Afrikaner, who also, like the Indians, have their own communities. You have English speaking white people, but over some time have diluted with Afrikaners. When I said Indians, I meant to say Hindustans and Muslim, but we just group them as one. I should say Indian community. When you have these races, they all form and contribute to what is the culture of South Africa in terms of like how we eat, what we eat, what we like. You find a South African that likes curry. Where do we take the idea of curry? It comes from Indians. And you find a South African, in a South African like biltong. Where does it come from? It comes from the culture of Boers. You find things like achites, pickles come from the Indian community. So, there's these crossovers in how we eat. Sometimes the how we wear in terms of gears of different sectors. Maybe, for instance, agriculture is highly influenced by the Afrikaner gear of clothing with regards to the agricultural activities. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. But then, in as much as these things are there, but I wouldn't say the kind of the things that really brings us together to mix. I feel like South Africa, in the beginning of freedom and democracy, the idea was entertained, but there wasn't much systems created which were going to have long lasting effect. And you see people, when we hitting crisis, it reveals that South African people are not united. They're still segregated racially, with not maybe just in terms of physically, but with just in terms of just not having a thing that really binds them together, which can help them to survive against all odds. Yes, there are exceptions. Yes, there is an environment of like now coexisting because of the new systems and the new era. But I feel that a white person in South Africa still like to see themselves as a European, you know, because with European, it comes with this idea of superiority and being the upper class and being the most important person and being the dominant people in terms of detecting way of life and things because of still the upper hand in terms of economy. I see an Indian not really wanting to adopt an African Africanism in them. I just see still a South African born Indian with many generations in South Africa, having lost even maybe the language, they still though see themselves as Indians in South Africa. It's like they came in South Africa with how they came in, and they really found their little India in South Africa. And this really is a problem in it to some degree. To some degree, it's good because you always want to be connected to where you come from, of which makes sense because that's what makes up your identity. You just want to know who you are, how you came about, how did I end up in Africa and stuff like that. But the problem with that is that it's kind of keep people exclusive, and in South African system in the past was set up like Indians were kept closer to their colonial masters so that they can be reliable and can be loyal to their masters. That's why they have like kind of a lead when with regards to their black counterpart, I'll say, because at that time blacks were just put in jobs which were hard labor, which were not in terms of managing things or like managerial jobs or things like that, which wasn't really helping them to be exposed to education and things like that. They were not really given certain privileges. They were extremely excluded because maybe they were considered to be a threat since they were the majority and they were the rightful owners of the land and everything. So it makes sense to oppress them compared to the ones that you took and shipped here to be slaves, and now you want them to be more. So it was a system that was really created for at least white Indians to have an up. I mean, sorry, not white Indians to have an upper hand, secondary to their masters, white people. So even in a new era, we still have an issue of attitudes with regards to how any other race sees black people. You had systems like it's a white person first, it's a second, it's an Indian in the second position, then at the bottom of the totem pole it's a black person. So this system created themselves like that, and then these are the results that we see in society in reality, And when we talk of rainbow, we can't be talking of people wanting to be called South African because it benefits them, it keeps them at the privilege. You have white people that would never want to leave South Africa because it benefits them. It still give them access to the world. Like white South African will always, I mean, not necessarily white South African to single them out. White people in all of the world, they live where they feel comfortable, where they want. They are never considered immigrants, always expats, because their privilege has been attached. The privileges of this world has been attached to their race, and so even if they are in South Africa, since South Africa is a beautiful country, it serves them best to be in it because they're still dominating. They can go all over the world and fail and come back home and still be number one. You see that? I mean, that's the fact. Systems are created like that for them all over the world. You have Indians, which why would they go back to India? Because in India, there's a caste system. There's a societal classism, which maybe if they are the Indians from South Africa, when they go there, maybe they will be exposed to racism they've never felt in South Africa, because South Africa still afford them to be somewhat upper in the upper class, and I feel like people, because of power and privileges, they are stopping this country from mixing and crossing over cultures so that we get rid of unnecessary attitude and come together and work. And I just feel sad for this country because if you look at other nations like Brazil, you find these different races. If you know soccer and I take you into the pitch and I say, who is Kaká? You say, is a white Brazilian. Who is Ronaldo? Is a mixed race Brazilian, maybe what you would call in South Africa colored. Who is Ronaldinho? Oh, he's a colored who is dark and skin. And it's because of crossing over of cultures and mixing, and you still find people dominating the biggest sports putting a spotlight in their country, whilst they totally look different. But in South Africa, you can't find that. You'll find the Indians flooding maybe the cricket. You find white people in the Springbok. You find black people on Bafana Bafana. You just see that is the true rights of South Africa. We're still divided. It's like we still have territories, which is like our territory, and it's just stagnate the country. We need to be South Africans which embrace each and every citizen that makes this unique country and want to see that works. Otherwise, this rainbow is a dead rainbow. And it's a sad thing to see that when we grew up, we were fed, and this rainbow thing was fed to us, was shoved down our throats. But when we grow up and we realize that people are just in South Africa because it benefits them. I want to be called a black South African because this is where I know, this is what I know only. But when I look at the Indian and the white person, do I really feel like they are part of this country? When I look at the Indian, when the Indian looks at me, do they see their fellow citizen and they see a black person in South Africa? You know, once we read all those things, South Africa can work. South Africa needs to create systems that will bring big black people, Indians, white South Africans together. Some people who still have racial issues and things like that, they'll just be a minority. But for this country to go forward, we need to set up system that will cause cultural crossovers, activities, entertainment world, tapping into each other's worlds, big conversations, big policy suggestions. Then we'll see the fruition of South Africa. Then we'll see a country which is not divided in terms of race. Because in unity, a lot can be achieved. You look at America, it has worked. Yes, they have their ills, great ills, but there's so much progress that have happened in that country. And because of allowing black people to be, they have made billions and billions for that country single-handedly with regards to their appeal in the black or in an African continent with their music, with their movies. Billions have been made. If white people, if Indians, still who are the people that hold much of the economy in this country, releases the attitude and adopts this majority of people in South Africa, give them opportunities, educate, train in different sectors and skills, we'll go forward as a country. We will be what we were intended to be, a rainbow nation in Africa. We can make it work because you have people like me that thinks that this country needs antidote. It doesn't need further division. It doesn't need further divisive messages. We can look at the ills and say, okay, fine, these are the past ills, but what can we do to make it work? Because insulting each other on X, exalting each other's mistakes and ills, attaching to each other's stereotypes, is not going to take us forward. Diversity can always be the answer. God heal South Africa and make South Africa to serve the purpose it was intended to serve, which was diversity and inclusivity.